A few months ago, I rented the Dyna Firewood processor. I shared a few videos of that experience, and overall, I felt really great about it. We produced a mountain of firewood. This is what's left. I've sold some, I've stacked some has gone into crates, but the original pile was at least 3 times what you see here beside me. But now, fast forward a few months later, I completely regret the decision, and I know at this point, wholeheartedly, I will never be renting that machine again. So this week, a helper and I spent about another 5 hours working through that pile. A lot of the wood needs to be resplit, and that's what is now here on the ground. Stuff that we have resplit. It's now a good size to sell, but it still needs some drying to do. So we've been stacking a good bit of it. I was out of pallets until today, which is why we just dumped a bunch of the resplit wood over here, and now I finally got some pallets again, and I can do a little bit of this stacking again. But I've showed you guys in a few videos now the time that we've spent going through that pile, sorting out the pieces that need to be resplit, and then stacking some of that wood has just been an exorbitant amount of time, and I now feel very strongly that time is completely not worth it, especially when you factor in the cost of added labor. I've got a helper here at $20 an hour to go through that. We've probably split and stacked 4 cords this week, and that's really not that much, but it's so tedious to go through that pile, sort it, split what needs to be split, move it to another location to stack it. It's just a very inefficient process overall, and in the future I would much rather process firewood a cord or 2 at a time at the most, maybe right into the dump trailer, and then take that dump trailer wherever the wood needs to be stacked, if that's going to be the process that we're going to do, if we're going to continue to stack wood. I would love to get a lot more IBC totes and put split wood right into the totes, but of course that is contingent on getting the right size splits off of the processor. So pretty much all of this stuff over here, this is about 7 cords worth on this long row. Everything over here, with the exception of maybe a cord of it, was stuff that we have manually moved from that pile over there to over here, and in that process resplit whatever needed to be resplit. So the first big reason why I will never rent that Dyna again is because it is incapable of consistently producing the type of wood I want to produce, which is, for the most part, relatively small splits. If you guys are newer to my channel, maybe you don't know, but the bulk of the firewood I sell is recreational firewood, and most people want just relatively small splits to do an hour or 2 of a fire in their fireplace or their fire pit or their campfire and that kind of thing. I'm not really looking to heat with it, so getting larger chunks of wood is not really ideal for the folks that I sell to. That machine was available with a 6-way wedge, and a lot of the wood, if it was over 12 inches, which I had a good amount of wood that was over 12 inches, it just did not produce smaller splits. It produced a lot of bigger pieces that needed to be resplit, and that is the heart of the resplit issue. Now, there are plenty of other processors on the market with different wedge options, and as an example, I demoed the Typhoon RCA 500, and it came with an 8-way wedge as its largest wedge. They also have a 12-way ring wedge available on that machine, and Dyna has some other wedge options, but through their rental fleet, I don't know of anyone who rents that machine with anything bigger than a 6-way wedge. So that would be something to keep an eye on, depending on what kind of wood you want to produce, but for me it just doesn't work out. The other thing is, as we started to work through this pile in the last day or so, we're really getting into the heart of it now, and down in the middle of this pile, the wood is starting to look pretty nasty. A lot of fungal growth, a lot of mold growth, and that concerns me a lot because I don't want to sell an inferior product. I want to sell only a premium product, and having mold-free, fungal-free wood is, I think, one of my key differentiators up to this point. Everybody else in the market that does any kind of volume leaves their wood in a big pile, and all the wood that's in the middle or close to the ground gets all nasty, and no one really seems to care. They just scoop it all up and throw it into a dump truck and sell it. And I don't want to go that route. I want to produce a better product. So that means now that we've got kind of a secondary sorting that needs to happen as we go through this, and we're pulling out all of the worst pieces and setting them aside because I don't feel like I can sell it in with the premium wood. I just noticed over here on the resplits that are waiting to be stacked, there are a few pieces in here that need to get pulled out. They're not premium because of the fungal growth. I pointed out on other videos about that machine how its measure stick, or the stop point on the processor, was this flimsy stick, and it was hanging by a carabiner that tend to move one direction or another, and as a result we got a lot of inconsistent splits. So I've got, you know, stuff here that's that might be, you know, 12-13 inches, and then I've got stuff that's closer to the 16 that we want. We've got stuff in here that's 19-20 inches. There's just cut lengths all over the place. So in the future, when I look to possibly rent a processor, I'm only going to consider processors that have a fixed stop, where it's just completely foolproof to get a very consistent length product. Sometimes I just need to do a little activity like that, like stacking, to clear my head, formulate my thoughts a little bit. And one thing I was just thinking about while I was stacking is I'm not trying to bash the Dyna processor. In fact, it's a very capable, reliable machine, well-built machine, all of that stuff. It's just that machine, particularly the one that I rented, is not right for my business. I produce premium firewood, I sell it for a premium, and I can't have that kind of inconsistency in my product because it's going to drag down the rate at which I can charge for it. And once you factor in the cost of renting the machine, putting fuel in the machine, the cost of my logs and all that, then the cost of my labor to sort through what was produced, to resplit, stack, and all of that, it drives up the cost of production by so much, I can't justify a lower quality product. If all I wanted to do was produce large chunk heating wood as quickly as possible, it would have been the perfect machine for me. But we're just not in that market. Our winters are very mild, and there's not a huge heating market to be had here. And frankly, even if there was, I just am not in the business of producing high volume, low cost wood, because there is a urban and suburban market just east of here willing to pay a premium for recreational firewood, a different type of wood that requires different equipment and different processes to produce that higher quality wood. So kind of like what Joe at Ohio Wood Burner produces. Everybody comments about how much time he spends stacking his wood. I don't know if I'm going to continue stacking long term. I've got my big bin out in the field. That is my first experiment in bulk storage. But I do know that it can't sit in a pile like that, because what I've seen in the bottom of that pile is just nasty. We can't do that. If it had sat out here for another 9 to 12 months in a big pile like that, it would be completely covered in mold, completely covered in fungus. And I don't even know if I would burn that stuff myself, frankly. So I think we just got to the point where we can salvage a lot of it. There are definitely some pieces in there that were so covered, we're going to pull them out and I'll just burn them in the wood stove here in the kiln. But that is the underlying theme here, is quality. And that's why I won't be renting the Dyna Firewood processor again. As always, I'm interested in hearing what you guys have to say on some of these topics that I discussed. So leave your thoughts in the comments. I'll respond to what I can. Hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.